What's up, YouTube? ODST Journal back again with another Operation Trebuchet news update. And guys, it's been a couple weeks since I last posted a video or talked to you guys really about Operation Trebuchet. It's been a dry couple of weeks. We've had a couple small developments over that time. Primarily Zephyr Souls are working on the Pelican and our stabilizer ring getting continued. Pretty cool stuff, but unfortunately it wasn't really enough for me to feel like I could justify a video over that stuff. With that being said, we've had a big week here just within the last couple days especially. With that being said, I am going to start out the video by saying I told you all so. Now, I will get into exactly what I'm talking about a little bit later in the video. I do want to keep this a little bit of a surprise until that point, so you guys are going to have to bear with me for just a little while we get into that. So we will we'll start off. We'll talk about the other stuff here that's been work in progress, and we'll go from there. So starting us off, we start off with some Spartan Armor in development by Freeman. This is the CQB armor based off of Halo 3. A little bit of work in progress and not very far along, but gonna be pretty cool. This is being designed specifically for Oshin's Mark 6 armor that is currently a side mod for Operation Trebuchet. If you guys are unaware, Oshin has become an official developer. While that is still a side mod available to the public, eventually that Mark 6 armor will be integrated into the main mod, presumably whenever the next release comes out. Hopefully at that point this armor will be ready. If it's ready before that point, we might even see it released into the side mod, although I have no basis for saying that. That's just an assumption. Not much else to say on that, so we'll just go ahead. We'll keep on talking about the rest of the stuff here. Going from that brings us on over to structures. So as far as structures, the first one we have to talk about is once again the stabilizer rings and the orbital elevator being set up by Go After It. Very cool building, still not super duper ready to go, but he's got the very basics of it in game, so we see some of the finer details on some of the stabilizer rings, but we also get a couple images of the rough estimated size of this orbital elevator in-game on Madrigal. To give you guys an idea of the scale of this is placed over the current orbital elevator on Madrigal. And this thing is super massive. It's actually kind of unfortunate it's so big because I was hoping to implement this onto Gal myself. But its size is so big, I think this would not only overwhelm the current facility I have in place to act as a base, but it would also spill out over like half the city because my city is a lot smaller. But still a absolutely awesome prop. This is going to be great for not only map makers such as myself, but mission makers as well. It looks so cool from the skyline and stuff. And I mean, the orbital elevator is a excellent prop for setting the vibe that this is Halo, this big towering sci-fi looking thing. But it is from early in the mod. It has shown its age, although it's not something quite as bad as the Pelican where you're up close to it. It's definitely aged compared to some of the other assets. So getting this new base for it that goes around it while still keeping the elevator in is an excellent idea. Beyond that, we also have some very other early stuff from Go After It, which is some blockouts for some buildings. These are obviously super duper basic, rough shapes and sizes for buildings that will be getting implemented later on down the line. Exactly how far out these are from getting developed into something more than they are, which is basically just blocks and curves, I do not know. But looking at these, you can get a rough idea of the shapes and sizes you can expect for some of the buildings coming down the line with Optre in the somewhat nearish future, I should say. But cool stuff there. Not anything else to say about that. So we'll switch on over to vehicles, because while I have one more building to talk about, it's actually going to be included with the vehicles. So we'll skip on over to the Pelican, which is in development by Zephyr. We've talked about this in the previous weeks, so this is just further development on the stuff we've already talked about. It's still a ways off from being finished with the model. We get to see the nose gun, stuff like that, but not much else to say about it besides that. We get some peeks of the thrusters and other stuff, so a very, very, very much needed upgrade to the Pelican we have, a replacement, so I'm absolutely thrilled by this. So I can't wait to see this progress more over the coming weeks and months, and eventually hopefully get in game. Then we have continuation on the mass driver. I always forget what this thing is called. Like, I've used it a bunch of times when I've played the game. I've talked about it in Edward's work a bunch of times, so I always forget the name of the stupid thing. But yeah, the mass driver here, not really able to tell the differences between this and the previous weeks. It looks like the system for piloting or controlling it's been set up a little bit more with some screens and stuff like that. With that being said, still a ways off from being completed. It probably needs to still be unwrapped and textured and definitely configured. So I have no idea how far away this is actually from being finished modeled, though, which needs to happen first. But it looks really good now, so it might be pretty close to being ready as it is. That's all I have to say about that. So that brings us on to our next model, which is that Hollywood has started creating, or has actually basically created and textured a lot of this, although we can't see it here, models for the ordnance for the short sword. These basically all include equivalents of vanilla weaponry for like jets and fixed-wing aircraft. So you've got air-to-air missiles, you've got tank busters, you have like all sorts of stuff like that. Some of these have different static modes versus flight modes too. Like they have like wings and stuff that'll pop out, which are pretty cool. The more unique among these are like the Disruptor and what will eventually be either probably a cluster bomb or a nuke even potentially, which will be super deadly. The other thing here with this, and it has a building I'll actually talk about in just a second. Before we talk about the building, I get to show that off. Actually, you know what? I lied. We do have the building in this footage. So I'll actually show off the building first, and then I'll talk about the other thing. So you can see the hangar bay that the short sword is in this video. Cool building. This is based off of the hangar seen from the distance on the sword base mission in Halo Reach. This was kind of talked about by a community member potentially doing this as his first project several months ago. It looks like Braz or somebody else on the dev team decided to pick this up and go with it. Awesome looking model for a hangar bay, perfect for these short swords. The other cool thing about this is that, well, the one we see on screen is just two hangars, just like the sword base one. It's my understanding is that these are actually have like a split in the center, and then there is also a third piece that you're able to put in, which is like a center hangar bay that has like openings on the sides. So these can all be connected together, and this is actually like a modular hangar bay. So absolutely awesome stuff. Very, very excited about that specifically. That was one of the things before we lost Indoor Bradster to real life or whatever, is he had been wanting to shift the focus of Optray's buildings that were getting added from standalone buildings to more modular designed buildings that could be quickly edited and thrown together in such a way that you can make several unique buildings out of just a couple different parts. Because a lot of the buildings that you had in before, well, you could kind of cheese them and make them look like different unique buildings. They weren't really designed for that specifically. So this is kind of the first such thing that you can see that being implemented, which is very awesome, very exciting stuff. Okay, so now we get into the big news. So back in April, I talked about after April Fool's that the dev team had officially announced the Longsword. It was announced on April 1st, and because of that, despite the fact that weeks leading up to it, the devs have been teasing this on other Discords and stuff, and the files and stuff had been talked about or mentioned briefly in streams and stuff like that, no one believed me when I said the Longsword was coming out. And to compound things, the devs deleted the Longsword after April 1st. That was the joke. And that's what I told people, and people didn't believe me. And if you were one of those people who didn't believe me, I was right and you were wrong. And I just want you to remember that forever. Okay, I would like to gloat more, and I gloated a little too much in the last video, so I'm just going to cut out there. As of last night, the Longsword is officially a asset that's going to be getting added into the mod. Braz and Hollywood have been working on getting a new Longsword built up, which is pretty similar to what we saw on April 1st. It does seem the April 1st model was actually ultimately scrapped or changed. I don't have the footage from it, but Hollywood was talking about that, showing that off, comparing the model to the previous one that was work in progress. So there's been some changes from that time. Ultimately, though, it's not too different from that point. It is going to be, however, significantly different from the original Longsword model. The original Longsword model by Zero was based off the C709, which is like the Halo 1 variant of the Longsword, with some integrations based off the Halo 3 one, because Zero tended to make a lot of hybrid assets and stuff like that. This one will be more directly based off the C712, which I believe is the variant seen in Halo 3, which is a much smaller version of the Longsword. So what that ultimately means is that the Longsword we will be getting is actually going to be slightly smaller than the short sword. Now, as far as accuracy goes, I believe Hollywood was saying is that in reality, the C712 should still be a little bit larger than the short sword, but that won't actually be the case for the mod, unfortunately, so not really a big deal, though. I think a lot of people, such as myself, are just going to be excited to have the Longsword back in a fully compatible state, instead of having to like try and cheese the mod to get it back into the game and everything. This should also be compatible with the other various ammo types and stuff that we were talking about with the short sword and demoing off with that. And I've actually got a video specifically on that note with Hollywood talking about the ammo types. So I will let him and developer Lux talk about that stuff, and I'll be with you guys in just a minute here.
Long-range AGM, short-range AGM, small GBU, medium GBU, large GBU, Cryo Bomb, EMP. That's your cluster bomb dash. Whatever. Look, this is the size of your chest. If you ever want a good one, this is it.
I'm a furry. I ain't got no limits.
I'm a furry. I ain't afraid of no shit.
Only the most perfect audio for ODST General's video.
Well, I mean, how often do you actually use the audio from this stuff anyway? I come to think of it, I don't see it. I don't recall actually seeing it that much.
All right, guys, welcome back. So, I hope you guys appreciated that very illuminating reason why I also don't usually record the devs talking or keep the audio of the devs talking in my videos. Anyways, pretty cool stuff. Very excited about those weapons. Like I said, pretty neat stuff. We do also have some B-roll footage of the Longsword, which I'll probably have had up or scrolling through. One thing I did note with the Longsword and I asked about is the fact that this does have a much more detailed interior than Zero's Longsword did. And as you guys may or may not know, early on after Zero's Longsword first came into Optray, it was actually something that you could walk into the interior to access it. The loading ramp, like is on this model, came down and you were able to walk inside. However, it was quite buggy because it's Arma and it's a moving vehicle, so it had a lot of issues and it wasn't really viable. So I've asked if this will have a walkable interior. I was told it might have one, but it's not in place or guaranteed yet, so that will ultimately be up to, I believe, Scorch is my understanding. At the end of the day, I suppose we'll see, regardless of who it's up to. It's going to be a tall order to probably get that in. I would hope to see it, but if not, it's not a big deal either, I suppose. And that would be it for the Longsword, but not the last big surprise. Also last night, after posting this and making jokes about me being correct about the Longsword, community member asked about the Vulture then being developed currently, at which point Hollywood said, haha, no, and then posted an image of a file containing the Vulture and then immediately deleted it afterwards. I joked that I was recording. However, I was not recording, not quite fast enough to screenshot it, but I was sitting in chat looking at that when he posted it. So I have at least seen a file that says Vulture. Now, I don't know if there's anything in the file. It could have been posted as a joke. With that being said, the Vulture has been a much requested asset for some time. Zephyr had started working on one literally years ago. That's never been finished. So, I mean, the idea of a Vulture getting developed for Optray is not really that far-fetched. With that being said, regardless of whether or not it's real, we do have to bear in mind, if it's being developed by Hollywood, he is developing the Rhino, the Kodiak, the Longsword, and the Short Sword all concurrently. So if it is him basically heading that, we may be a ways out there from seeing that Vulture, regardless of whether or not it's actually being developed. So don't get your hopes up too much, but, try to keep you guys as informed as I can. So that wraps up everything for main mod Optray. That brings us over to First Contact. Now, this hasn't been officially shown off for First Contact. When this was sent to me, this was developed as a side mod to Optray. This was being developed by Donnie, who has, as we know, become part of the Operation Trebuchet dev team. He has worked on a bunch of Forerunner assets prior to joining the dev team, and some other Covenant stuff, like I think he had an Energy Sword, a Needler, a bunch of stuff. So he's developed a bunch of stuff that can go into First Contact. I have it on good authority that his assets are getting implemented into the mod, at least as far as the Forerunner stuff goes. I'm not sure about the Covenant stuff he's developed, or this asset, which is the Locust, which he has. With that being said, I suspect most of it will, with the exception of maybe the Needler, which is already in the mod, as it's on the Needler Banshee and it's sized correctly. That one probably won't get implemented. However, the other assets here probably would be, such as maybe the Energy Sword. The Locust seems highly likely. And of course, just the more simplistic it gets, the higher likelihood that we'll see something of that nature. But this was shared to me, once again, as a side mod, but if it is going to become an asset, this would probably become an official asset, as the guy who made it is now a official developer. On the note of Forerunner stuff, that brings us over to the community side of things. And on the community side of things, we have a couple of independent developers not working with any of the bigger mod teams you guys may know. They are developing Forerunner assets, Forerunner structures of their own based off of Halo 1. So we have these signaling structures and the buildings that surround it, such as the small towers and walls and stuff. Really awesome stuff. These guys haven't really done a whole lot of modding for Arma. However, they are big modders in Halo CE. They do a lot of modding over there. One of them actually did a video that was on my channel previously, which was the Flood Virulence, which you guys can see if you go down to my playlists. I've got a video series where you play as the Flood, fighting the Covenant, and I can't remember if you ever fight the Marines, but you definitely fight a lot of the Covenant. A pretty cool mod, though. Definitely worth checking that one out. I'm very excited to see these Forerunner buildings come out, even though I know at least some of these assets are basically the exact same ones Donnie was working on, and that those assets are probably the ones that got added in. I don't know if he's gotten quite all of these added or not, so I am excited to see that these guys are working on this stuff too. And there's, obviously the possibility that if these guys are working on it independently, they could get it done sooner than Donnie would, because obviously with Donnie's, we will have to wait for First Contact to update again, presumably, which is going to be probably several months at the soonest, maybe even longer than that. So with that being said, guys, there is a bunch of other content being worked on. The Powered Armor mod, for instance, for Optray, or the side mod, I should say, that adds Spartan shielding, now allows AI shielding, which I believe I've talked about on the channel. But it's also been, by default, extended out to all elites from what I've been told. I haven't actually checked that out myself yet, but that should be an awesome addition for a lot of you guys. Some community members have found a workaround allowing players to actually switch between Spartan skeletons and standard Marine skeletons using the Arsenal, which is very cool. It's still work in progress, still has some bugs, but that's awesome stuff. It looks like I had Cryo Bomb that was being tested and work in progress by the same group of guys. I'm not exactly sure which side mod that is being developed for. I don't know if that's would be for Opcos, because that's cosmetics, but I'm guessing it will be for one of those mods. Operation Arsenal expansion or whatever. Regardless of what it ends up being for, I will talk about that stuff when it comes out if I catch it. So with that being said, guys, that is everything for this week. Thank you guys for bearing with me for a longer video this week. I am sure you guys are just as thrilled as I am, but regardless, as always, I want to know what you guys are most excited for from today's video, as well as what you guys want to see developed for the future. Alright guys, take it easy.